Presence, the podcast for everyone interested in bodywork, embodiment, and somatic practices. I'm Andrew Rosenstock, your host and guide on this enlightening journey. With my expertise as a somatic movement therapist, yoga therapist, and certified Rolfer, I'll merge clinical insight with real-world experience to enrich our discussions with our guests. Through engaging and informative talks, this podcast delves into mind-body paradigms, offering insights and strategies to empower personal growth. Your support is vital for our grassroots and lo-fi production. If you connect with our content, please leave a positive review and subscribe on your preferred platform. Your engagement helps us reach a broader audience and supports our mission. So thanks for tuning in today to Touching into Presence. Fasten your seatbelt as we embark on a journey to explore the transformative power of contemplative and somatic practices together. It was a pleasure to be in conversation today with Mike Williams. Since 2008, Mike has been honored to guide clients on their journey to becoming a Soma Sapien, a person living with the integrated wisdom of body, mind, and spirit. Together, he assists you to transform chronic pain into the doorway of the next emerging version of you. Through Pain Reprocessing Therapy, Hakomi Mindful Somatic Psychology, Rolfing, and decades of experience teaching and practicing diverse somatic and movement arts, he'll work together with you to help you learn how to operate physically, mentally, and emotionally, create new pathways forward that leverage both your innate gifts and your growth edges, and empower you on your journey forward through life. In today's talk, we discussed Mike's career journey, the concept of mind-body coaching, and the complexities of working with clients. We also explored the principles and practices of Hakomi, the importance of mindfulness, and the value of humor and levity in therapy. And lastly, we discussed the challenges and rewards of our roles, and the significance of emotional connection in business relationships, and our ongoing personal and professional development. This was, for me, another really fun talk with a like-minded colleague, and I could have talked for hours, as you'll hear, and hopefully we'll have Mike back on for some more themes and laughs and good conversation. So, anyways, with all that said, let's actually get into the talk.
Man.
Hey, Mike.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm excited to be in conversation because we talked about this when we had a pre-call. I remember peak COVID, going for walks around my parents' neighborhood and having calls with you. And still, like, I was still newer to non-physical Rolfing, I might say, or not like more than just pushing tissue. And I remember talking with you and being like, this guy sounds like he's on the same page as I am, or on a similar page. And we just had these great talks, and I really liked it. And I remember thinking when I did start the podcast, there's a few people I wanted to share in a few modalities, and you were one, and Hakomi was one, because I didn't really know enough about it. So part of it, I want to learn more, but I also knew enough from talking to you that there was something there.
Cool.
And so now we're here.
Finally. It's about damn time, man.
Yeah. So why don't no, it is about damn time. I apologize. Life happens.
Of course.
I have people in the queue that I've talked to years ago, and I'm like, we'll get to it, and then life happens.
Sure.
I gotta get on that.
Yeah.
But this is a passion project. So talk for the people who don't know you. Why don't you tell a little bit about what brought you to the path that you're on, and then we'll later maybe go into Hakomi. That might be a part of it. But just share a bit about Mike.
Yeah, I mean, it's a story, so I'll try to be succinct. So this is my second career, technically. My first was in finance, and I was actually an investment banker and a corporate planner for about a decade out of my undergrad. It was fun for a little while, but I got burned out, like many do. Approaching my late 20s and the 30 mark, I kind of was on the search for what would be something that had greater meaning for me professionally, and also felt like I was contributing to the world in some way, versus just pushing numbers around kind of day in, day out. So I think I started beginning to reflect on just what had been early influences that I was interested in. I had grown up teaching and training in the martial arts for 12 years or so. And so I was always very interested in the body and possibilities that the body had, personal empowerment around martial arts. And in addition to that, I had grown up with my mom navigating chronic health challenges. So I'd had a lot of exposure at a young age to what back in the 80s were, at least what felt like to me, like really niche-y, weird things like acupuncture, or homeopathy or macrobiotics, things that are more broadly accepted, I guess, now, or known about. And so I just kind of had this wash of like different interests, and I went on this long multi-year exploration to see like, well, what do I actually want to do with my life when I grow up? At some point in my early to mid 30s, I got turned on to Rolfing. Professionally, I'd known about it, but I began to learn about it more, and I was really, maybe at least as I perceive it, in contrast to a lot of practitioners, that Rolfing really works wonders for them personally, and they then want to become a Rolfer to share the same healing that they've experienced. I was, I guess, fortunate to not have that path, but I was really drawn in parallel with this period of my life where I was really trying to redefine myself and find myself, to I think the transformative potential that I perceived in the Rolfing. With this eye toward, well, if I can help someone, I think this was kind of anchoring back into martial arts. If I can help someone really tune in to their body and gain greater somatic embodied intelligence, what then becomes possible for the rest of their lives? And so that was kind of my fuel there. And so I enrolled in the Rolf Institute, went through that program, started private practice. So a pretty radical departure from where I'd been prior. And, just started cranking away as much as I could. Probably within about 2 to 3 years of being in full-time practice, I began to just notice like there's something else going on here, at least as I was perceiving it with my clients. Like there could be amazing structural work, manual work, tangible, visible impact, reported tangible physical impact from clients, feeling great. Wow, that really changes how I move, how I feel, what I notice. And then I happened to work in this office where I could step out of my office space. It was a shared kind of collaborative, and there was this long hallway to the front door, and I would occasionally just happen to walk out at the time when my clients were leaving. And I remember one instance, which is, stands out, but it was indicative of many, where I watched this client, this great session, walk down the hall and put like everything back on that they'd walked in with, like all the kind of habit patterns that had kind of come in as problematic with symptoms. And that was a really good insight for me. And it got me really curious about like the why underneath. Eventually that led into, studying movement and coordinative work too, but where I went, which has been amazing for my practice, but where I went first and deepest actually was into Hakomi. From there, really looking at, I guess, the psycho-emotional operators or why underneath structure that's kind of manifesting through structure became really interesting to me. I had been exposed to the Hakomi community here in Austin through my wife, who's also a practitioner, and her training cohort. And so I started kind of dabbling in Hakomi around 2010, 11, 12, taking some little small trainings. And then in 2014, I took the big, long multi-year training, which eventually led to me becoming certified as a Hakomi practitioner. And so during kind of those early to mid teens, I was really beginning to lean or blend my Rolfing work with clients that felt called to it, a deeper exploration of, what's showing up here in addition to the symptomology, or maybe that is generating the symptomology. And often it illuminated things like, a poor relationship with a boss that was just activating over and over and over, habitually in the system, that then showed up as, say, shoulder and neck pain, right? Or intractable back pain that on MRI looked like a disc issue, but was actually related to some family drama going on at the moment. So since then, I've had, my practice has been maybe half Rolfing, half what I just call mind-body coaching as a Hakomi practitioner. I'm not super fond of the word, but it lands. And I've since picked up another body of work called Pain Reprocessing Therapy, which is kind of mindfulness and CBT-ish tools around the neuropsychology of chronic pain. And that's a really good blend for me. I'm really enjoying that. And, the focus is for the most part on folks with chronic pain, but occasionally some other challenges come in. But exploring those non-structural layers, sometimes alongside the structural layers through Rolfing of what's going on with chronic pain scenarios.
Sounds awesome.
I love it.
For people like us, it sounds awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I work with people that are definitely experiencing not awesome.
Yeah.
But it's really, I don't know, it's just deeply meaningful work to me, and I really enjoy it.
Well, I think that's what I mean by it's awesome. Like the person going through it, clearly it's not awesome for them. But when they come and see you and get some sort of awareness shift, be it my arm can move now, or I'm tying this into this other thing. I can see the connections. I made a few notes from things. There's so many things in there I really like. The mind body coaching thing, I think, is interesting. The quote that I learned, and you probably, I'm going to guess, that Dr. Rolf had said, "We are educators." And, maybe if it was coming out now, she would say we're coaches, because that's the buzzword.
Educator is a good word.
Yeah. So, I mean, but you can't, if you were to market mind body educator, mind body coach is going to market better. Like I get that. And at the same point, I get why it doesn't fully sit with you. And it's the same. I mean, I went through a phase of saying that I do ontological coaching with people. Most people don't even know what that means. And I don't love the term. I don't love the term coaching either. I had a business coach call me up the other day because she wanted to refer people to be Rolfed to me. And even she was like, no, I don't love the term coaching. It's become ubiquitous. So I'm with you. And I'd say that for me, that's what a good Rolfer is doing, is some form of coaching / education / awareness building.
Yeah, I agree. And, not every client's into that, and that's okay too. Right. So you have to also suss out the degree to which you're doing that, which has been kind of a long part of my journey too, is getting that read.
Yeah. I'm struggling. I don't want to say I'm struggling with that, but for me, it's such an important part that when people come in and just want me to push tissue, I can struggle with that. And I'm trying to figure out, that is important, but there's this other stuff that's related, and working with that. It's a process. That's something we talked about. We may go into sort of that aspect of that, but there's actually so many good things that you put in there that I really want to just chat about, if it's all right. Like,
yeah, lead the way.
Yeah,
lead the way.
Well, I mean, just that second career, I hadn't known that, and it's funny for me because there are people who it's more and more now that Rolfers, according to people I've talked to that are teachers, more and more people coming are younger. In fact, one of our previous guests, Duffy, had spoke about that when she went through the training, people in their 40s and 50s, second, third career. But now, because it's maybe in fashion or whatever reason, you get like 20-year-olds, and nothing wrong to 20-year-olds. Please, if you're listening, I'm not critiquing you. But there is something really nice about coming in with this other experience, and then also coming in and being in class with people in other experience, so that the training going on is about working in the world more, as opposed to being fresh out of. Some people don't even go to college; they come just for this, but others are like out.
Wow.
They are. They don't really have experience in the world. Not that being a second career does either, but there's just something about being in that career and having that experience of life, and then coming into Rolfing or coming into Hakomi even, or other practices that are about that. I think is really important. And then you touch on this other part that I've always danced around and haven't found the way to express it, which is, it's interesting that you say you commented the fact that so many people who do become Rolfers become it because they got Rolfed and said, "This is great, I'm going to go do it." And I really appreciate how you recognize that that's why many people do it, and you had a slightly different aspect, which I think is great, because one of my critiques is that the people who are like, "This is great, I'm going to do it," and there's so much more. I mean, in some way I was that, and I needed to really, do a lot of more other self-work to become a much better practitioner. And I still have a long way to go. Sorry, a fly literally just flew in my mouth. That was amazing.
Wow.
I was watching him
that
fly
is
around.
amazing.
Went down. Well, I see do what's his name, like see do or see learn do instead of see sit be with that and then do. And so one of the things I say, and I may even be accused of this, is there's so many of us in the field who are really dysregulated, who are just about, they had this experience. It opened a door. They said, "This is the door. I now get it. I'm going to learn this." And it's like, no, you open the door. There's a lot more way to go. And so there's that. And then I hear this, so I'm commenting on sort of you not going in that way. And then also recognizing later as well, oh, there's this other thing, not just for my clients, I'm guessing, but also for me. And my guess would be, as you also went down into Hakomi and the other stuff, that, I mean, I just imagine from my own experience, it had to change your Rolfing practice, because you were seeing the human in a more, for lack of a better phrase, a more whole way of being. This other aspect of the human was there, which was, as you've already mentioned, affecting structure, even though it wasn't a purely physical structural realm.
Yeah, so that's a great comment. There's a few responses I would have there. One is, first, I'm just finding myself really interested about Duffy's comment about the age kind of, I guess, depression, if you will, in the cohorts that are coming through. I think that's really interesting. Hakomi is like Rolfing, meant as an embodiment practice for practitioners and for experiencers therapeutically. And so part of the Hakomi training, you're doing the work, you're experiencing it live in your own system and being with other people in your cohort doing the same thing. So, I felt two main things when I completed my 2-year Hakomi training, which was one, like my DNA had gotten rewired in some way, for the better. It was very transformational. And then it had the very tangible impact. My touch got better. Like hands perceived differently from doing this somatic psychology training. So, there was definitely that impact, but to your specific point, as far as how I began to perceive clients, humans in general, I think a big shift for me was, I think we, in bodywork fields like ours, we often will say things like, don't always look for the problems, look for the resource. But when you're working on someone, you're often trying to just fixing the problem, right? That's like a very intuitive place to go, I think, in manual therapy. What I think shifted a lot for me through Hakomi was starting to just gather up that more holistic picture about, well, sure, there might be, say, some structural collapse or whatever you'd want to call it in like the core elements of the body, but there's a reason that is generative in some way to this client. It's got meaning and existential development wrapped within it. And it would be a huge miss if I just tried to get lift there. Right? Because that client, for instance, that lift might be utterly terrifying. And I've seen comments over the years or heard comments over the years, something along the lines of like, oh, they just weren't ready, et cetera, et cetera. And it's sometimes that's true. Like someone might not be ready to do transformation. Like I get that, but I also think it's a shortcut to kind of like, I didn't know what to do, here, like I didn't know the whole picture. And, and I'm not claiming to know the whole picture by a long shot, but when we can perceive, more of the psycho-emotional existential going on underneath or within the structure, it gives me a totally different way to be with that client and work with them. Some of the Rolfing goals might remain the same, but it's communication, the nature of the explorations, the kind of finding like, well, what actually works here? Like what's just enough for this system versus, again, like holding to some, I think, dated notion of what like a balanced, upright structure and gravity looks like and should look like. Kind of goes out the window for me a lot.
Yeah, there's so much in that too. I'd heard this story, I think third hand, so I'm probably butchering it, but Hubert Godard, the Rolf movement, Rolf movement dancer, a lot of stuff had said, he was talking about scoliosis and basically saying that, it's like it forms around, like the scoliosis comes because it's formed around something. So the body, in this case, is fine, but the body is forming around something, an experience, be it the structural stuff, or be it a force coming in, and that force doesn't have to be physical, but some fear. And so and I think about in Cambodia, there's a temple, Thepranam, which is people have seen in like Tomb Raider, of which the jungle grew over the temple, and trees are forming in random places because it's the nature is sort of forming over structure, and thinking about that. So if we are, like you said, if we're trying to get that lift out, but lift around what might actually be in there, that, and that it's a really tough phrase, that, is it ready? I have really worked on trying to take that out of my lexicon or my vocabulary, because first of all, who am I to say what another person is or isn't ready, and from what angle, what perspective could that be? While they might be ready from a certain perspective, there's 3 other perspectives that are not, quote unquote, ready for it. And then we push through it, which is great. And then the backlash crumbles, or you said, is frightening, is too much. And so really starting to look at this structure of the body in relation to the way that they have learned to be in the world.
Yeah. And those are always, in my view, of the utmost importance and serving a generative purpose in their lives. Like, it might be dated and old and they might not like the outcome and they might want to change it, but it's there. I often say to my clients, like, when we're often deconstructing habits, like structural habits or coordinative habits or emotional habits, maybe. And I often will say something like, that the person that constructed this habit was most likely a child. And so it's, like that child was you trying to figure the world out that you lived in. Right. And so it's always got a generative purpose within it, even if we don't like what it's doing now today.
Yeah.
Right. And I think imposing models, that kind of should be on top of that is it's harmful potentially. Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
I will sometimes say it's dangerous, and people think I'm over dramatizing it, but harmful. I see it as that, and I see that, without being too alarmist, I see many practitioners doing just that. I have a colleague here who I see him doing that. I see him pushing a lot through tissue and putting his narrative on how the body should be. And as opposed to my intention when I'm working, I presume the same for you, is how could the body be right now? Could it be, what would these other alternatives be like? And allowing that experience, that felt experience, that other possibilities to shine through. But as I'm guessing, a lot of people aren't used to that, and they actually somewhat prefer might be the wrong word, but they're more used to, no, just tell me what I need to do. just do to me. And it's how could I mean, it's the same word. How could I ever really know what you need? And so instead trying to lead them to understand what they need in their body and or other.
Yeah. And it's tricky. Like, as I'm listening to you and, thinking my thoughts about my own words, I realize, there's just kind of baked in shortcomings to a lot of manual therapy trainings, right? They might say they're holistic, but if you're just working the body, it's not holistic. Mm-hmm. And so, it's like having a consistent self-education process as a practitioner, and reaching into other realms, or maybe at least just, being able to communicate really clearly to yourself and to your clients, like, here's my little sliver of what I do, and this is what we're going to do. And maybe that works too.
Yeah. I used to use the word holistic, and I believed I was holistic. And that was largely because I was told I'd studied holistic things. And it was partly reading Jeff Maitland's work where I recognized I don't think it's possible to ever be holistic. the whole, like, I can be as whole as I understand a whole today. And then I learn something new and I'm like, oh, wow, it's even wider. So I understand what people generally mean by it. I understand the value from a marketing standpoint of why we should say holistic. I get that. I started to take it out. I still might use it here and there because I do realize you need to, I think you need to dangle fruit in a certain way for people to buy it and then say, actually, that was a wax fruit. Here's the real, sort of fruit or whatnot. But I also struggle with that because I feel like if we're doing that, we're already starting out on a false narrative. And it can be hard to build trust into that then, where it's like, well, I came to you for this and that's what you told me, but now you're telling me it's actually that. And I don't have the answers. I'm still trying to figure it out.
I mean, a short comment there will just be like, for several years, every person that walks in my door, we have a pretty long conversation at the outset. Yeah. To really not everybody even wants that. So that filters a significant portion of the people that reach out to me out, which generally I think is for the better for both parties. If people know what they want and, they don't want to have the conversation, that's, I think more power to them. But I try to do what I can to, cast the most accurate description of like, hey, here's how I do what I do. And then based on what you're saying, this is what I think would be the way. And does that work for you? And, just getting basically informed consent out of the gate so that there's no, sense of like a bait and switch or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's this part that, and I forget if we talked about this when we talked the other day, but this sense of I will tell my clients a lot. I don't want you to actually trust me fully. I want you to. I'd rather skepticism so that you kind of are finding your way. But at the same point, if you knew what you wanted, if you knew what you needed, why would you be here? And a big part of I have some clients who are like, I'm coming to you because I know I don't know, and I want an outside perspective. And I think there was somebody who had emailed me or we were texting, and they'd said, well, I don't think we're going to work because our belief systems seem different. And I was trying to get them to say, yeah, but it's your belief systems that are getting you in the way in the first place. Wouldn't an external belief system, again, don't have to trust me, but wouldn't the sort of pushing around the edges of what isn't working for you possibly be helpful?
Right.
But yes, a lot of people do want to stay in their comfort zone, but yet somehow get out of it. It sort of doesn't make sense. But I guess being a human doesn't make sense.
I mean, this circles us back to the coaching idea in my mind, because it's like they don't want to coach. Like you're trying to coach in that moment, right? Like expand your thinking into this realm, maybe. That to me reads coaching. And they might just want a assistant, right, to help them do the thing they know about, kind of thing. And there's a difference, and I think it's, helping them determine which one they want is good work too.
Well, yeah, I think helping them figure out what they want, is that what they believe they want, and for me, it comes largely out of the body still. And there are different ways of even just seeing, okay, well, I hear what you're saying. Do you hear how your voice sounds this way or that way? Well, that vocalness, it comes out of a physiological component, the body as an instrument. And are the vocal cords being compressed? Is the body more tight? And starting to learn a lot of that. But there was another point you said that I also really, I think you and I are on the same page, which is, I'll have people come in on the first day and we might talk for 30 minutes before we even quote unquote start. And some people really don't enjoy that. But what we're trying to do is basically, I think of it in terms of Rolfing principles. we're trying to build rapport, and I'm trying to say, okay, I want to hear where you think you are, what you're saying you are, and I want to share where I think we are and whatnot. And really, it's about building trust and building a shared communication so that we can actually do the work and say, oh, this is what the work is, as opposed to, oh, I thought you were going to do that. And sometimes even after that, like session 3 or 4, not in a 10 series, I mean, they've come in for like a third or fourth, fifth. We end up having a session where it's just talk. And it's not uncommon that people will be like, they're unhappy during it because they had an idea of what was going to happen. But then later they see the changes, and it's not uncommon. I've had people be like, can we have one of those just talk sessions? And it's like, didn't you hate that? Didn't you hate that? And say, well, yeah, but I see now. And it's like, and I struggle because I know when I'm in those sessions, the people who they haven't got to the point yet that it's going to click. And there's this tension. And I know that tension, I can see it being friction as a good thing later, but they don't. And I feel because they're getting really upset. And I'm trying to point out, but look at you, feel that. Can you, I haven't still figured that out fully, but I think I hear a lot of that in you. And I think you.
Yeah. I love that you're having those experiences, man. Like, that's great. I mean, that's all I'll say about that is because that's really good work, and it's hard because you're both kind of out there on the edge together, right? Figuring each other out. And it's important.
Well, and I think, as you said, it's important to me because and important to you because you and me understand that that's where it's at. But until people kind of get that, assuming that you and I are correct, then it's just tough and it's uncomfortable and it's wonderful afterwards. But during there, we're having a human experience.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Can you share a little more about Hakomi? Because I'm still pretty curious about it.
Yeah, let's circle back there. You just want to hear kind of what it is, type of thing, or is there something specific that would be useful?
I don't know. I mean, I think for people listening who don't know, maybe hearing what it is for you.
Yeah.
One thing I think there was a period where it was more, I don't want to say more popular, but there were maybe more Rolfers who were going into it, or there was more body. Like, I know that it's related somehow to it, but I don't know enough of that history with that.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely came out of the same era as Rolfing. It was, it's heavy. It's got heavy roots in Boulder and Naropa, as do Rolfing and other related modalities. And similarly, there was like a schism in that community, just like there was in the Rolfing community when, kind of in this case, the patriarch stepped down. So I find that the parallel is really interesting. And I know a lot of what I would say the older school Rolfers are, have been exposed or familiar, or have maybe done some trainings with it. So you're spot on there for sure. In general, kind of like the nickel tour of it is, it's a somatic psychology practice. Traditionally, it's as I perceive it, it's a lot of talk therapists train in that modality. But it's also a lot of, or at least a decent number of body workers, kind of adjunct type of practitioners. Again, I'll just kind of coin that holistic word again here. So it rests in a lot of principles that kind of built out of Wilhelm Reich's work, so if you've seen, like, he has body maps that he kind of created to start to understand personality characteristics. And that was taken by, I think, Alexander Lowen, and then, grown into Ron Kurtz, who was Hakomi's founder. The main tool that is used for the exploration is mindfulness, which, is not the aim. It's not like MBSR where, like the teaching is how to use mindfulness to say, relax or, regulate your nervous system. It's using that tool of mindfulness to, slow down and deeply pay attention within one's system to things they might not normally notice. That's simple. And the idea is, I think, like in other somatic modalities or somatic psychology modalities, that the body and what it's doing are reflective of the inner worlds of meaning making that have occurred or, continue to occur over the lifetime of someone. So if someone's coming in, and this would be, I'm kind of going to bucket Hakomi as its own thing. If someone were coming into like a therapist's office who was a Hakomi practitioner to explore some relational challenge that they were having, say, the idea is, well, let's, as you're describing what's happening for you, so-and-so, like, let's have you slow down and, tune into what's going on in your body as you describe this, like right here in this present moment. So it's meant to be present moment exploration versus like a historical reenactment of story, right? Although those filter in. So with, well, I'm going to back off of that. I was going to start to blend it with Rolfing, but the idea there is, as we're having an emotional, relational, or psychological experience, there's physical things that go with it. And for the science nerds that might be listening, a lot of this centers on memory reconsolidation and the transformative potential of modalities that kind of employ that. So that would be, an understanding of when there's an emotional valence, maybe a story mentally, a physicalized set of impulses or sensations, they're networked together in the nervous system and kind of operating very often subconsciously. And so it's about illuminating those kind of that subconscious network or set of networks happening around whatever the thing is that's being explored, with the aim of understanding why. Like, why is this habit here? Like, it's, as I said before, it's got value. So let's understand its value. And then in many cases, then trying to interject, say, a newer, better, more fulfilling or nourishing possibility, which can be, like that can potentially deconsolidate that neural network and then reconsolidate it into something more up to date, say, healthy, air quoting healthy on that. So that's kind of the nut of what Hakomi's about. I think it fits really great with this kind of body work that we do as Rolfers, because we're often trying to understand, why are movement or postural patterns like this, and how can they be improved, freer, more liberated, easier. And sometimes there are those, like those existential things woven in, like beyond just the physicalized expressions.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir.
I figured.
Yeah. Which is, it's in some way, one of the, I don't know the word, but I find that the Rolfing community is somewhat torn between those who think like us in that regard and those who say like it's just the body, just work, just the body. Those who have a contemplative practice and those who don't. And you and I have similar some beliefs. So you preach. I hear that, and I think, and that works so well with it. Largely because also, you're working on someone. Let's say you're doing a 10 series, and they're hyper regulated, right? You get them to become a little more mindful. The default mode network shuts down a little bit, turns off a little bit. The tension in the whole back body goes down a little bit because they're not on edge the whole time. And you don't have to actually put as much input in the system, which is also not putting as much input back out into you. Like right. So it evokes this sort of change that just seems better for the whole being. But again, you and I think similarly. So of course I hear you say that, and I say, well, duh. And there might be people who think different. And
yeah, one of my kind of favorite Hakomi-isms is, and I won't get it exactly right, of course, here, but it's it centers on this idea that you're teasing with, helping people regulate down. You don't need to do as much work. It's about lowering the noise in the system, like noise versus signal. And,
so the language, man.
Yeah. So the Hakomi-ism is basically like, it's easier to leave a loud concert to have a conversation than to try to shout over the music.
Oh yeah.
Right. So like super intense, like I'm sharpening my elbows prior to, you getting on the table type body work is, in my mind, the equivalent of shouting over the music.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas, if you can help someone like tune in, slow down, like, again, it's all information, even what's coming out of our hands to the nervous system. And so it can be much more elegant.
Yeah, it's also like, it's not just, and I think you're alluding to this, it's not just what's coming out of our hands, it's coming from how are we sitting with our clients? How are we taking up space? How is our nervous system, what's going on with us when we're having a lot going on in our personal life and we're not able to not bring it into the office, we're jittery.
Yeah.
So yeah. I use signal and noise a lot. So but I've never heard the really beautiful way you shared of the loud hall, the loud concert. It makes again total sense to me, and I'm gonna borrow that. I'm going to totally borrow that or steal it, but I'll borrow it. I'm not going to borrow it to you. I'm not giving it back, so I'm not really borrowing it, taking it. But I mean, it is totally that. And I think we talked about this when we spoke before, but so much of my work has really come into having people really feel how they're not on the table, which they don't feel when they come in. Of course, they're on the table. That's all they know. So how could it be any different? It can't. But through the process, recognizing, can you see how, there's a different relation to the table now or something else? And they'll be like, yeah. I use a lot of bad jokes. I'm a sort of a provocateur on purpose. It's, I like Alan Watts as well, who was, I think, a total provocateur. It's not with malicious intent. It's just, I need you to see something a little different. If I'm really too sweet and too kind, there's no friction. If there's too much friction, it's not helpful as well. So like a little bit of poke here, a little bit of this here. Yeah. And, get in, I'll joke, by the way, the table hasn't changed at all, or, because that's what a lot of people will think, like, oh, I haven't changed, and yet the table's different. It's like,
right.
There's all these little sort of tricks I've learned to just have people realize, like, I can push your tissue all day. Your arm's still going to be holding itself up in air because that is not physiological. There's a habit, and it's fascinating. And once they kind of get that, they're usually in because they can feel it, they can see it. All of a sudden, there's more for them to buy in, and it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reminded of a quote also, or a phrase that just intuitively hit that I heard more recently in my pain reprocessing therapy training, which was kind of along the lines of like, chronic pain is an output, or chronic tension. Sometimes people come in for like, I'm just tense and I can't get rid of this tension. I need you to smash it. And it's like, well, that's an output. It's not a tissue problem. It's an output of your nervous system. Right. So that's what you're speaking to when I hear that. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I just emailed this week, Lorimer Mosley, and I'm really hoping to get him on.
Man.
Yeah, I know. I don't think
amazing.
He was really sweet, and he was basically like, I got a lot of requests. I don't, and I wrote back, we'll see. But he Him and I give his talk about pain to so many clients to get them to realize that. And he's awesome. And one of the things I also love about him, and I said this in the email to him, is it's a very serious topic. It's very serious, yet he meets it with just the right amount of levity, of humor. And so that I think can be so wonderful that here we are, we're in pain. What I tell a lot of my clients is like, okay, well, if it's really serious and I meet it with serious, what do we get? We get more serious. And so if you can find a little bit, like too much humor, it melts it. And I used to do that all the time. It was deflection, sort of figure out, okay, where and how do you get the right amount of just a little bit of humor, because it makes the serious a little less. And then that can meet, and there's a little bit of space that we can move around it. And it's a tough balance. I don't know the actual measurement. He's amazing at that. And that.
Well, when you're doing that, if it's received and, if they're available for your humor and, it feels connecting to them and it lightens the mood, you're part of it, at least of what you're doing there is you're creating greater safety in their nervous system, not just from the rapport, but from the levity, right? It like lowers the danger load in their system.
Yeah. People are coming to us or other people like us saying, I need help, but I need to show you my insecurities. I need to show you my vulnerabilities, physical or other. Yeah. And so how to be safe with another person is a real thing. And of course, mentally we can say, yeah, I'm safe. I trust you. But underneath we're gripping and holding. And there's a divide between those two. And that's really what I'm generally trying to do. And some people do find me really funny, my family not included, and some people don't. And it's and there are certain people where I know humor is just not going to work. Like we're not at that place where it is. But I'm thinking of one client in particular. She laughs the whole time. And it just lets us get in a little more, and it's really wonderful for her. But I have another client I'm thinking of who laughs the whole time, and it's partly because it's interesting. It's a way to actually not go into the pain, and I'm aware of that, and yet it helps us kind of get closer to it, because she also knows I'm doing this because there's this other thing under there, and in her words, I'm not ready. Again, we've talked about ready, but we'll just use that as a general theme. And yet the humor lets us get a little closer without diving in. It builds more safety that we can slowly start to get around it. And it even does provide a bit of taking some of the tension out. Yeah. There's still the noise is coming out. The signal is still there. We haven't fully adjusted that, but some of that noise is out, and that gives more safety. It's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, clients like that are really, they're really great, I think, to, the slow movers. They can be like slow and steady. And they make, assuming they are on board with it, like they make great long-term clients. Yeah. Because it's like, hey, we're just kind of like, we're not going to force anything. We're right up at that place where it's a little edgy, but not pushing through it hard. We might nudge into it occasionally, just to kind of keep things moving along. But it's, like some people need to thaw over time, and they need someone who's patient to do that with them as a practitioner.
Yeah. I think of some of my teachers. I had a teacher, one of my yoga teachers, who told me more or less, you are going to be a good teacher because you are stubborn and a slow learner. And it took me so long, and I wanted it quick at that point. Then later I recognized quick is almost never good. And that slowness. I mean, even when I get a session and I get off the table and the practitioner says, how do you feel? I say, give me 2 days.
Right.
Let me be with it. Part of me, my younger part, wants to give an answer now and make you feel validated and whatnot. But my body is like, it's in that slow process.
I love it. I love that.
And I think that's a part too, is allowing people to realize that this actually is ultimately a slow process. And in Peter Levine's words, titration is what we're looking for.
Right. I mean, it took them however many years to get there, right? And it's doesn't mean it'll take that many to get out of it, but it's worth acknowledging, and invoking Peter Levine is, that's good. That's good there. It's apt for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And I always like to say, although I've never had him on, I've tried to get him on so hard. I'd love for me to talk with him, but early Rolfer.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. There was some cool early Rolfers. There were a few.
Absolutely.
So one of the things I'd wanted to talk about, but I'm thinking maybe it might be another talk. Before I ask that, are there things that you haven't shared that maybe, because I get excited, sometimes I may cut off, or are there other sort of things or other things that came up that you're like, this is something I want to talk about or relate with?
Thanks for the question. I mean, I know I've noticed through the conversation that my brain is like, man, there's so many ways we can go.
I know.
And that's always really interesting to me. I definitely feel like we could do this for hours and hours. There's nothing that feels, at least right here in this hot moment, like that it's missing, that stands out. I'm still curious what else you want to know that would be of value,
Yeah. And this is one of the fun parts for me. I'm going to, in some way, kind of explain my process, which in some way takes me out of it. But the hardest part for me, one of the hardest parts of being this sort of quote unquote host in this talk in this series is, there's so much I want to do. What is the right? When am I an interviewer? When am I a colleague? Like balancing all that and having this sort of relation, what's best for the people, trying to kind of be in the space, which I love for my own self-development. It has actually, I think, made me a better practitioner by being in these relations. And so there's a part of me that is like, man, I could geek out with Mike for hours. We could be in all this sort of stuff. There's a part of me that wants, one of the things we talked about before was to talk about practice building, the ups and downs. And there's a part of me in Rolfing terms that's saying, like you said, wow, there's so much here. There's so much. And at the same point, there's a part that feels like this is also maybe complete for now, or maybe not complete for now, but there's like what would it be like? Would it be a time to have closure for now, knowing that there's actually a shit ton more we can do, and just being in that field. And so I'm sharing that out to you, sharing my current place of holding all that, and then also being a peer. And what that sounds like to you.
No, I love it. There's there's a very integration centric principle happening when you say that I hear, right? It's like, that feels like enough. And the system of the conversation can like take it in and then see what it needs the next time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also to be like, there's an insecurity in me that's like, but no, maybe I want more of this or that. And, no, they normally go longer, but we're at this point, and then being in, again, there's like 3 different roles, but hearing that and saying, I actually think you're right. My system is sort of in both of those, but saying this is actually, it feels to me partly like a really rich place to be like, I think we're okay for now.
Well, let's lean into that then, man. We'll make it an experiment and see how it goes.
Well, that's it. This whole podcast is an experiment. But for now, I say let's work towards the very, very last. If people want to find you more, I'll post a link, but why don't you actually just share it here?
Yeah, sure. So the website is the main avenue, and that's just simply Soma Mike, just like it sounds, SOMAMIKE.com. Yes. Yeah, thank you. My social handles are Soma Mike Williams. I'm a little less on social these days. but I pay attention to it. And occasionally things drop in at random versus at discipline.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah.
It's like we look different, but I'm in some way, I'm like, are we twins? What's going on? But yeah, I'll share that. And
thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to hold it open that there was more to talk about. And so another time I'd like to have you on. These are one of the calls with you are things that they really enrich me. I'm hoping that they enrich other people. I think there's so much in here, and if not, at least you and I think are feeling better after it. So there's something in that. Yeah, let's work to have another one. Yeah.
Yeah, I would love that, man. Thank you for having me on. It's been great.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll look forward to being in more talks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to us at Touching Into Presence. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. You can find out more about Mike at www.somarmike.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you'd leave a positive review of the podcast and subscribe to it through the platform of your choice. When you do this, it really helps other people find us, and we greatly appreciate your support. We look forward to hearing back from you and seeing you on our next conversation at Touching Into Presence. Bye for now.